Alright, hey everybody, I'm back working on the Mustang today. It's about 12 degrees outside in Connecticut, so obviously I'm here in the garage. I got my propane heater going, and what we're going to be doing today is taking apart the front suspension. We're going to replace most of the worn out rubber parts on this car. So the first thing I'm going to do is take out the shock absorbers and the springs so that we can then go down and take out all the lower parts of the suspension. Alright, so the first thing we have to do is take off this dust cover, whatever this thing is, this protective shield. And you do that, there are 6 bolts. You can see the end of them right here. On 3 on each side. So we'll take those off, and this little cover piece will come off. I think it might be welded on there. Alright, so the next step is to remove the shock absorber, and I'm just going to take off this entire bracket that holds the top of it, because we need to get that out of the way anyway to use the spring compressor tool. Oh wow, that guy's loose already. Problem with that one. Right. Gotta go find the nut. Okay, so next to the bottom bolts on the shock absorber, so you can see this is the bottom of the shock, and there's one here, and then there's one around the back side in the same location. So I'm going to take those bolts out, and then we'll be able to pull out the shock. Alright, now once you get those 2 bolts out of the bottom, you can just lift the shock out. I put these nuts back on hand tight, just to prevent it from like shooting out of there. It's under a lot of pressure. When you take the tire off, make sure you put a jack back underneath the lower control arm and jack it up a little bit to put some more pressure on the spring, so that when you release the shock, it doesn't like explode out of there. You know, I just put these a couple of these nuts back on these studs on the top just to keep it safe. So you can see somebody had already done this car. This is a KYB gas adjust type shock, which is you know, the kind that everybody installs as an aftermarket piece. So I think this one's pretty good. We're going to clean it up and make sure it works and put it back in the car. Alright, so now we can install the spring compressor and get this spring off. Alright, so here's the spring compressor tool that we have. We got this at AutoZone. They have this free tool loaner program. And basically what you do is you go in there and you pay for the thing. It was like 50 bucks. Then you have 90 days. You could bring it back and they give you all your money back. So at the end of the day, you haven't spent anything, but you have to leave you got to pay for the thing straight up at the beginning. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to rub a little bit of grease on this thread just to help everything turn faster and smoother. This has a fine thread on it, not a coarse thread. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is drop the spring down from the top into, or the compressor rather, drop the compressor down from the top and get it to go as deep down into the spring as we can. We want to compress as many of the coils as you can. And then once you have that down in the bottom, at the top end, there are these, let me show you out here, there are these washers, and there's this fork piece, and the fork piece goes into the spring like this. It has these ridges on it that grab onto the spring like that, and then what you do is you take these washers, I think you put like 2 on top and 1 on bottom, something like that. The washers don't move very far. You put it through the spring like this, and then you tighten up this bolt. That's basically all you do, and as you tighten the bolt, it draws down, you know, brings the fork closer to the jaws, and that compresses the spring. Alright, so the spring's all set up. the fork is in the spring, and I'm going to tighten this up. They say don't use an impact gun on it, so I'm going to try and do it by hand and see how it goes. It turns pretty easy. I got a 1/2-inch drive, ratchet handle on here. Now the only thing is, I've only got about maybe 2 inches of thread before I bottom out on the spring perch at the bottom. So, if 2 inches of compression isn't enough to relieve it, to get the spring out, we're going to have to think of something else. It looks like it's working. Our spring's starting to get loose, wobbling around in here. I just want to make sure that I'm pretty much, I've got maybe like a turn or two left before the thread hits the perch down at the bottom. Yeah. Get a couple more turns on it and then that'll be it. That'll be the max compression that I can get. Alright, I got it figured out. I lowered the jack. I had jacked up the lower control arm to try and pre-compress the spring a little bit. So I lowered the jack, so I let the lower control arm fall, which lowered the entire suspension assembly. And now I can get this thing out of here. Wow. That's like a bomb. Just waiting to explode. Okay, so now I think you should be able to see a little easier how this works. The spring compressor, threaded rod goes down through the middle of the spring. Then there are those 2 hooks at the bottom, which each grab a coil, and they're staggered so that they grab a coil. And then at the top of the shaft of the threaded rod, there's this fork piece that you install. Oh man, it's heavy. And the fork, which I'm holding in my hand right here, has a slot on it through the top. And then the shaft goes down through the top, and you can see it has some washers. And those washers press down on the fork as you turn the threaded shaft, and that squeezes the spring. So now what I want to do is I'm going to disassemble this spring compressor so that I don't leave this thing just sitting here like this. Alright, so now to unthread the spring or take the compressor out, you just turn the tool the other way, loosen it up. That goes pretty simple. It's pretty easy to turn here. I think I will use the impact though, just because there's a lot of thread to turn. That's it. The tool is completely disconnected now. Take the fork out. Actually unscrewed the jaws from the bottom. There's the spring. So here it is. It's upside down, obviously, but you can see how tall it is. Compared to me, it's almost not quite up to my knee. But that's it. Next time we'll take off the upper and lower control arms, tie rod ends, the other pieces of suspension. But that'll be another video. That's all for this one. So thanks for watching. Keep coming back, and we'll be working on the Mustang.